I guess the answer for anybody genuinely considering flipping homes would be don't wait for the market because you're going to wait for the rest of your life. Like, it's never been a good time to get in. And it depends on personalities. There's your real risk averse people that I would, if I'm talking to a risk averse person about getting into real estate, I would tell them, like, look, you can control your risk by knowing information. Know what repairs are needed and know what those things cost. But the longer you hold on to it, the more I would say you're risking speculation rather than investing. So investing would be, I have comps that have sold or are under contract right now, and I will sell this thing in 3 months. I have pretty good reason to know where the market's going to be in 3 months. If you get out to 9, 12, 15 months, you're venturing into speculation land where you're not quite sure what the market's going to do a year and a half from now. We have seen zero improvement in returns for holding on to properties longer. We've seen a direct relation to the longer you have a property, the lower your chances are of making money on it, which we didn't really expect, especially with how much the market has grown in the past handful of years. Do I need a real estate license to flip houses? I get that often. No. I actually would encourage against it. I have mine. But real estate agents have to follow more laws and regulations, so don't do it. That would be one mindset. You've got to develop an investor mindset, and you've got to be prepared to make a little money, make a lot of money, break even, or lose money. Don't say to yourself, there's no way to make money in real estate flipping. You have to tell yourself, I just don't know how to make money in real estate flipping.
Be seen, be heard. Radiance Videography Podcast.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to yet another video on the Radiance Videography Podcast. Today, we are going to be having my good friend Kameron Bagby back on the show. We had him a couple podcasts ago, if some of you watched that. And we were just able to learn a little bit more about his backstory, how he got involved into the house flipping industry. And, we got to talk a little bit about like some business stuff. But today I wanted to have him back on and talk about some of the questions that people might have if they're getting into the industry, or maybe you're just a veteran that wants to pick up on a few extra tips. So, like I said, we have Cam back on here. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. If I can reach over.
Thanks for having me around the mics.
Yeah. So good to have you back on, dude. Really enjoyed the last one, and you gave such insightful information. I couldn't wait to have you guys back on. And today I'm really excited about be able to give some valuable information to people that maybe are getting into the industry, and some of those questions that might be out there. You just kind of got on Chat GPT and found some questions that people might be asking. I thought we might be able to address. My buddy actually sent some questions as well that I thought I might throw at you. But before we get started, is there any kind of thing that you wanted to open up with or talk about, or?
I don't think so. Just had a blast last time and excited to be back on. I think we can roll into some questions. And I think what it pulled up, I saw some in there and I'm like, oh yeah, I heard that one before and have ran into it. So we should be able to pull something out of it.
Absolutely. So just a backstory too, if you didn't get to watch the other video, Kameron works for Simpli Homes. Owner of the company is Jesse Goodfellow. And, they flip about 100 homes per year, which is ridiculously crazy in the industry. If you've ever heard of anybody even flipping 10 to 12 homes, normally that's a big deal. So that it's really exciting to be able to have these guys on and bring their knowledge base. So if you haven't watched that video, go back and watch it. Maybe we'll probably try to post that little capture card right here if it works, or it might be on this side.
Link in the description.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we'll put the link in the description. So let's just, is there any particular like hot questions that you get, people ask you quite often about the industry, or maybe we could just run with some of those questions on ChatGPT?
Yeah, I mean, the first one that pops in my head that everybody asks all the time when you tell them you're even remotely involved in real estate is just how's the market, or should I buy a house right now? Should I wait? So the market question is the most common, and it's the most impossible to answer. I guess the answer for anybody genuinely considering flipping homes would be don't wait for the market because you're going to wait for the rest of your life. Like, it's never been a good time to get in. It's never been the best time to get in. I mean, in '08, when homes were as cheap as they were ever going to get, everybody was afraid that they would never come back. So it was a bad time then. Looking back, now we know if you got in '09, you tripled your money in like 2 years. So, but in the moment, those people did not think it was a good time. They're like, well, I don't want to get into real estate. It's falling apart right now.
Yeah.
And then, you've had the past 3 years where the market has just exploded up. So the thought right now could be, well, it's probably going to be hard to buy equity. Everything's so high. But again, if you're going to wait for the market, you're going to wait forever. So that's the first one and the most common one that we get. I mean, absolutely every day of the week.
And I can see why people, like, if you're like me, I don't really like to take like big risks.
Yeah.
And so I could see how that would be scary. But then at the same time, looking back, 2008, man, I wish I would have.
Exactly. Yeah. I was 8 years old and I wish I would have bought a shed. It'd be worth $200,000 right now.
That's a great one.
For sure. Yeah. And risk is probably something that I imagine these questions will get into. But yeah, if you're down, we can just roll down them. And if it's a silly question, we can just skip past it.
Maybe I'll throw these ones that my buddy Tyler threw at you, and then we can kind of maybe continue.
Let's do it
too.
Yeah.
But he says, what's the one thing to look for when you're buying a house, a foreclosed house?
Okay. The one thing to look for. Well, it obviously comes down to numbers. So it's really tough to say anything physical about the house because we have found homes that are perfect. I mean, we've bought them for 30, 40K less than they're worth and then did literally nothing to them and just listed them at what they're worth. Those are rare. They're fewer and farther between because the circumstance that ends up in that sort of sale is more rare. But a good hint for your average investor who's just getting started would be to find the house nobody else wants to fix up. We do a lot, but that to this day has still been our niche. I would definitely say is like, if there's a house that is just unbearable, the smell, the look, you guys
probably get a lot of those.
That's what we're looking for. If I see one of those, I get excited. But really, I think the true answer there is just going to be margin. It all comes down to your numbers. I mean, because you can have a high-end house in St. Charles County, or you can have a low-end house there. Same for, we buy all the way out in Farmington, Missouri. Same deal. So you really got to run your numbers. Knowing the numbers and having some quick math tricks up your sleeve will help you identify very quickly whether or not something's worth pursuing.
Some of that stuff was what you were referencing on the last video. Is that correct? Some of the things that Jesse kind of had in his head.
Exactly.
And you kind of got on spreadsheets.
Yes. Yeah. For like a quick filter, you're just scrolling around looking for a house. Yeah. You're going to want to take, the sale price of the house times 75%, because that gives you a 25% margin, which is kind of bare minimum worth your time. And much less than that, and you're going to be doing a lot of work for just a smaller return. So you start there, and then if you can ballpark repairs kind of quickly, just looking at it, and that's what I told you Jesse was unbelievable at. I mean, he'd get it really close. But if you can get it within 10,000, it'll tell you whether or not you want to go after it.
Okay.
So if you have, real quick example, if you have a $200,000 house ARV, which is after repair value, if you know you could sell it for that fixed up, you want to take 75%, so that's 150. And if you know it's going to take $50,000 of repair to get it there, your max offer is $100,000. Now that's quick and dirty, and you can just do that really fast. But if they're asking 175, you kind of know, like, I mean, I can shoot them an offer, but it's probably going to be a waste of my time. If they're at 85, you now know, okay, this is worth me going and looking, trying to get exact repair numbers. I would not necessarily recommend buying a house off of your head math. Probably write it down on a piece of paper.
I was going to ask you, do you guys ever buy like sites unseen, like just?
So we do not. Okay. We've had a lot of discussions about that. We'll get really close And really what we'll do is like from the office or from a computer, we'll kind of get our offer sight unseen, especially if the seller has a lot of photos, and then we'll just send somebody to at least put eyes on it.
Yeah. Now, I don't know nothing about house flipping, so like except for what I've seen on HGTV and some of those guys doing that. Is that a lot just, you think, for the whole like show and making it more interesting, or just is that people actually do that?
Yes, the HGTV investors are legit, but I do think a lot of it's for the show, and they don't make like bad decisions, but they make decisions I wouldn't copy unless I were doing a show. Yeah. Like my favorite example that I always talk about is I was watching one where they spent like $5,000 making a custom light fixture out of a canoe.
Oh my God.
And then they like hung it. Like I wouldn't recommend to a new flipper that you hang fine art in your house as, a light fixture. At least not in our market. I mean, if you're out in LA or New York, maybe.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think with the way
that's really
things are,
narrow, like the certain amount of people that's going to want that house.
Exactly. Yeah. We're always talking about, I talk with my guys about going after the biggest market. What's the most amount of people in this area looking for? So that changes depending on what city you're in. Again, like St. Charles County, we try to make it a little nicer. There's a few more wealthy people out here kind of looking for the house to be perfect. They have the money to spend and they don't want to deal with fixing things. If you go out a little bit more rural, like DeSoto, or there's, any number of towns, those ones, we may just get it to where it'll pass a safety inspection and then they can paint it themselves and make it whatever they want. It'll kind of save them some money for the people who need to save money.
That makes sense. And so if they do some of those touch-ups and stuff, is there any type of I would assume like you're doing like more neutral colors and things like that?
Yeah, we try to do a blank canvas that looks pretty nice. So and we talk with a few people. The style changes every year or two. But for the most part, we've stuck with, like beigey grays and white cabinets and, like a tan floor. Yeah. Something that, if they get in there and they want green walls, they can do it without changing the floors. Or if they want to paint their cabinets, they can, for sure.
Yeah, I remember back in the mid 2000s, like everything was beige, like everything was brown, like it was just
brown and brown. Yeah.
I look back, it's like gross.
I think it just switched recently, from for cabinets at least. I know it went from like white cabinets to like I've seen some more dark stained wood colors and blue and accents, especially in your higher end houses. Yeah, colored cabinets are way up. So always changing.
Yeah, that's crazy. So the other one is what's the number one thing? Is it just the cost? Is it foundation? Is it location? I probably left off that part. Is there any of those that factor as far as what you already addressed, or is that pretty much?
For sure. Yeah, I think I'd just reiterate. Yeah, it's the numbers. Okay. And maybe one final thing I would add to it is don't listen to anybody who isn't in the frame of mind you're in. Excuse me. Like you'll talk to neighbors, you'll talk to your friends, and they'll look at the house and they're like, "Oh man, you just need to burn that down. The foundation's bad. There's termites," and they'll look at it and they're not doing the math. They're not thinking, and it's fine. They're not trying to make money off of this. They don't need to think, but they will tell you just burn it down. But if you've done the numbers and I can fix that foundation, we've done this. You can lift a home off the foundation, tear it out and re-pour a new one and drop the home. And if you know what that costs and all your numbers line up, do it. The one sentence answer to that is it is all about the numbers. Yeah. Nothing else matters. Doesn't matter what the home looks like, where it's at. Anything.
That's such a good point, because like if I was going to do that, like I would definitely be the guy. What you were talking about is like, look at it as like a money pit, like, oh my gosh. But if you know what you're doing, and I think that's one of the things that Robert Kiyosaki talks about in his book, the Cash Flow Quadrant and stuff like that, was like how you got to, there's that learning experience, learning curve, knowing the industry, because that one mistake can cost you like hundreds of thousands of dollars and then put you under, right?
Yes. And that exists in real estate as well, for sure.
Yeah. But it sounds like what you're saying is, as long as you know the numbers and you know, like you can do those repairs and all that stuff inside that scope of work, like you should be be golden.
100%. Yep. Yeah.
But I guess there's all that learning and knowing of like, okay, what stuff actually, what's involved and how much is it going to cost to fix it? Because I would think that a lot of times people might get over their head. They might think it's going to be such and such, but it ends up turning out to be way more.
Yeah. And it depends on personalities. There's your real risk averse people that I would, if I'm talking to a risk averse person about getting into real estate, I would tell them like, look, you can control your risk by knowing information. Know what repairs are needed and know what those things cost. Then you have your super risk tolerant people. My encouragement to them would be, just because it's for sale for $20,000 doesn't mean it's a good deal, because you can very easily end up over your head. Like for both personalities, you need to know the numbers. It's not an emotional decision. It's not I'm risk tolerant. So I'm speaking to myself, and Jesse and I talk about this a lot and laugh about it. I have to constantly remind myself, just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's a good deal. And if I'm thinking the words, this is what we laugh about, this has to be a good deal. Those words have gotten me and the company into more trouble than probably any other words. Nothing has to be a good deal. It can very well be a bad deal. So know that you know.
He's trying to rein you in a little bit, huh?
Oh yeah, I'm just like, we got to get after it. This thing. It's for sale for $15,000. But yeah, $25,000.
It is so good to have both personalities though, because I'm very more on the adverse side of. Man, I don't know about that. I don't want to take the risk. And But so let me just see if there was any other. Okay. Also, if I know how to do a lot of the stuff, is it better to hire out work or do it myself the first time? So I think this question probably comes from Tyler's a good friend of mine, and he's flipped a couple of his own houses and ended up taking way longer than what he had anticipated. Or some of the guys that he was hiring on the side to come in, end up like not be able to show up and whatnot. So what would you have to say to somebody that maybe is starting out and they're thinking about doing it for themselves?
Yeah, for sure. We talk about this quite a bit from a strategy standpoint, and it depends on your motives, depends on your goals. If you are trying to have a decent income and not work a lot, then you can do a handful of homes and do them all yourself. It's the lowest stress. It's, dealing with contractors and stuff. I mean, it can get pretty stressful. It can be a lot. Just, dealing with humans. The more humans you involve, the more complex it's going to get. But if you have any desire to grow a business or kind of really start doing this, like you said, kind of get to that first milestone of like 10, 12 a year. If you're trying to do one a month, that's going to preclude you doing everything yourself pretty quickly. It relates to leadership pretty directly, which is if you're in the trenches, you are not going to be able to lead effectively. That's really, really tough to do. And I think that's what allowed Jesse in the early days of Simpli Homes to grow like he did, was he was very good at delegating those tasks off. Not afraid to do the work himself, but I think he just realized pretty quickly, I can't do much more than 5 if I'm doing it all myself. So if you want to grow fast or grow big, you're going to have to hire people out.
I think that's a good principle really for any business owners. I mean, like I find even myself, there's just, I'm still kind of a one-man band and I sub out some stuff here and there, but it's just like wearing so many different hats. And you were talking about on that last video about how all 3 of you guys were just grinding it like crazy, like trying to juggle all the balls and stuff like that. But obviously you guys were doing 100 homes, which is, quite significant. But I could see even with just one guy doing 12 houses, how, like you said, that would very quickly be too hard to handle and you'd be just like stressing yourself out.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. There is a world where, the market's competitive. And if you want to get into it, I tell everybody I talk to this, the little guy, the one-man show will always beat the bigger companies by doing the work himself. So it's also kind of a good way to get in. Because if you think about it, I mean, these bigger companies, I would say we're on the bigger side. We have to pay our overhead. We have to pay our guys. We have different pay structures, commissions, everything that kind of goes out. So the margin we're looking at, the math we're doing when we're assessing the home is much different than the guy who's probably pretty pumped if he makes 15, 20 grand. You know, if you have the cash saved up and you can go to a bank and you can make 20 grand in 2 months, 3 months, and you do that 4 times a year.
Yeah.
You're probably pretty stoked, especially if you're coming from, you know, a more traditional job.
Yeah.
So I do think that'd be my encouragement, I guess, to that question, to the heart of that question is like, there always will be room in this industry to get in. So if you're just trying to get into your first one and you're like, man, the margins are tight, I may have to do the work myself, I would not discourage that. Go for it. Get in, get the experience. You know, make sure you're doing your numbers and you're not going to lose your head on that deal. But even if you break even on your first one,
I think if you can make 20,000 per house, you know, like, and you had like 4 or 5 of those, you know, making about 100 something thousand a year, like that's not too bad. Like
exactly,
definitely replace like your full-time job with that maybe that you're doing. But I guess the hard part would be like, you know, if you're trying to start out where you got a full-time job and you're doing these flips, you know, all by yourself.
You're definitely gonna have to work 80, 100 hours a week. I'd say either way, if you quit your job and you want to get into it, work 100 hours a week because you're gonna want to move quick because you're gonna really want to make sure that you're ahead of the game because things can always go wrong. Speed is paramount in any industry. It's especially paramount in real estate. The longer you hold on to a property, it's just your chances of success go down. They do not go up typically. But that's where there's so many different contexts of getting into it. Because you do 5 a year, you make 100,000. So I know a lot of guys that, you know, their wife wants to do interior design and, you know, they just they can live pretty frugally and they just hang out all day and do 4, 5, 6 homes a year. And I love that idea. Like, I think that's super cool. If you guys are into that and, you know, it's fulfilling. It's honestly, some days with us doing as much as we're doing, with as many people as we're doing it with,
I can go back.
I know. I kind of look at it. I'm like, I've asked Jesse. I'm like, do you ever wish you just kind of kept doing it yourself? And we love what we do, but it is a cool way to do it.
It is. This might be a little bit of a side thing, but like we talked a little bit. I think touched on it last time, but I was listening to a gentleman that, and I'd love to hear your opinion, but he owned his own video company, and you know, his mentality was just like grind it. Like he hit these, like he made these gigantic goals for like in the 10 years, like he wanted to be like a millionaire or whatever.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, like, well, this was just recently he got on the a podcast and I was listening to, and so he hit all the goals. Like he was like, man, it's great. But, you know, he's still kind of a younger guy. And he's like, man, if I had to do it over again, though, I wouldn't like try to hit those goals in such a short amount of time because like essentially it really affected his family life and his, you know, his relationships and, you know, even his marriage and all that stuff and like just the burnout. And he's like, he got to that 10 years. And he's like, man, I was just so burned out. I didn't even want to like touch a camera. Like,
he's just like, I hate this now.
So, but he was just saying like, why did in my mind, I made myself have to hit those goals in such a short amount of time. Like I could have spread that out and just been a little bit more consistent and still hit those same goals. And, you know, I don't know it just made me think about when you were like talking about, but I know on the real estate side, like you said, there's time is of the essence of like when you get a house of whether you're going to make money or not make money. It's just kind of like, it made me think about too, like maybe think about if somebody is getting into the industry or some of the things that they may want to think about with their time and, you know.
I think the way that shapes out to be, you know, to use some wisdom and discernment in that, if you buy a house and you get your first one, work like a maniac to get it listed and then then back off. Spend some time with your family You don't have to do it that way, but it really would be kind of my advice to anybody trying to get into it is, maybe you kind of go through seasons where you buy a house and like it's game time. And then once it's listed and once it's selling, then you focus on it. It's just going to be a little bit different than your 9 to 5 and you're home in the evenings. Like you probably want to work 6 to 8 for 2 weeks and then, kind of go through these big spurts of working a lot. You're going to want to be prepared to do that for sure.
Okay. That's interesting. So yeah, that was just a little like got off track a little bit with it, but was there a couple other questions that the ChatGPT gave you or anything that you can think off the top of your mind that, people ask?
Yeah, I think this had some good prompts. Like the very first one is definitely AI is incredible. It knows it, really it knows what people are asking on the internet. So the first one it pulled is how much money do I need to start flipping? This is an answer that I give a lot. And I like to be straightforward. There's not as straightforward of an answer as people would like here, but in my best effort to do so, I would say about $30,000 for the area we're in. And I don't know if an out of state is watching, the median home sale price around here is $250,000 to $400,000. And by here, I mean like eastern half of Missouri. Right. St. Charles is closer to $500,000.
If you're in New York or California, it's going to be
you guys are looking 50, at a couple $100,000 minimum. Like
wow,
because like a ranch home out in California, in LA, is selling for a couple $1 million. But that's a number I like to give for people here local. The number is derived from you can get a loan to do these things, but you will need a down payment and you will want at least 6 months of emergency fund to pay for that mortgage. And with those things taken into account, that's kind of why I say speed is paramount. If you're doing one, and especially if you're kind of tighter on cash, like if you're sub $100,000 in the bank account, you're really going to want to move as quick as you can there. But I would say $30,000, $40,000 is going to be enough to get you in the door if you're good at building relationships with a local bank or a local investor.
Now this may be kind of a dumb question.
No dumb question.
So, is it mainly the big reason why like you don't want to wait because you have like you're initially working like with loans that you're paying interest on and stuff, so you could lose money that way, or what is that kind of what's going on there as far as like let's say I paid for something in cash, is that really going to affect like if I wait a few more months to sell it versus?
No, that's a really good question. Yeah, so if you have loans, then there's the expense building up every day. There's that side of it. Even if you pay with cash, the reason, in my opinion, you kind of want to really push speed is because you could just put your cash into something else and have it be growing. So if you buy, your average investment home around here, you're going to be in it for $100,000, $150,000. And what I've seen a lot of people do is they take 6 months to a year to do that project and they make 20 grand. And I'm like, man, your $100,000 just in the market would have made you 10 for no work if you invested it semi-decently.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So that's a comparison I always run in my own head is like, you want to be beating the market by quite a bit because it's a heck of a lot more work than just than stocks or whatever else you could invest in.
That makes total sense.
So it's kind of the opportunity cost, I guess, is if your money's all tied up, you might be missing out on some other opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
you always want to make your money work for you, right? And if you're not,
yeah, exactly. And then there's the other risks, which is like, the longer you hold on to it, the more chance there is of like economic downturn or upturn. But the longer you hold on to it, the more I would say you're risking speculation rather than investing.
Yeah.
So investing would be, I have comps that have sold or are under contract right now, and I will sell this thing in 3 months. I have pretty good reason to know where the market's going to be in 3 months. If you get out to 9, 12, 15 months, you're venturing into speculation land where you're not quite sure what the market's going to do a year and a half from now.
Oh, I could totally see that. I mean, shoot, like it's just even right now, it's so up in the air of like what's kind of going to happen in the next 4 or 5 months. So yeah, I totally get that. So yeah, I appreciate you answering that question.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I can add one more thing to that. Actually, now that I think of it, we have a super strong correlation. Like we've tracked a lot of data to know this information. We have seen zero improvement in returns for holding on to properties longer. We've seen a direct relation to the longer you have a property, the lower your chances are of making money on it, which we didn't really expect, especially with how much the market has grown in the past handful of years. But we've had 6 or 7, we call them like problem properties that we're like, okay, well, we'll do this or that. We'll rent them out. We'll hold on to them and see if they grow. And we just haven't seen any success with that. The only way I can see success with that, somebody commented on the last podcast, and it was correct, is if you set it up as a rental and make it fit rental numbers, which are different numbers. But if it cash flows as a rental, then you can kind of time the market if you want. That's a decent way to do it. But just sitting empty, unfinished for years, never pans out.
It sounds like you guys have a unique with the amount of homes that you guys do, be able to get a lot of really good market research.
Yes, we try to track a lot of data.
Yeah, that would be so helpful. Oh my gosh, I'm sure that's so valuable for you.
Yeah, definitely a perk of doing the volume we've done for a handful of years for sure.
That's awesome. So next big question, is there another good one on there or?
That one's a big one. Do I need a real estate license to flip houses? I get that often. Okay. No, I actually would encourage against it. I have mine, but real estate agents have to follow more laws and regulations. So don't do it.
Okay.
Just use an agent. Wow. So that one's fun. You can just like check that box.
I thought about that. That's a good.
Is house flipping still profitable in today's market? Yes, you can find data on this by a company called ATTOM. They track it. It is down. House flipping profitability is down nationwide. But it goes up and down all the time. It is still profitable.
Goes back to that first one, know your numbers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Know your numbers. It doesn't matter what the market's doing. There's opportunities out there. What are the biggest risks in house flipping? Unknown information, unknown numbers, especially septics, wells, sewer laterals. Even if you're on public water and sewer, you can have a sewer lateral that's got tree roots grown into it. Those can take a good deal to a bad deal pretty quick, because if you're expecting to make 30 and you have a $15,000 repair come out of nowhere, all of a sudden you're making 10%, which is what you could have made in the market to just sit at home and play games on your phone.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm sure that could be so stressful, but then I guess you could look at it as, well, this is a learning experience, right?
Yep, you do. You want to control as many variables as you can, but at the end of the day, you do kind of have to roll the dice. This is one I did think of on the way here. How do I find undervalued properties to flip? I think that's a pretty common question. If you're serious about getting into it, like, where do I look? And it's fun because I have some pretty straightforward answers. So auction.com, a lot of the bigger guys in the industry don't like auction.com because what they're attempting to do is advertise these deals to get them out to more people, which cuts down on margins. And that's why the old heads don't like it. But it is a solid place to look. You will be competing with the best of the best in the industry. But if I can encourage newbies, again, your margins can typically be tighter and you only have to win by $1 in this industry.
So you might have the advantage if you were doing that, right? Because you could be like, well, I'm okay with, losing a little bit more money because my profit margin is higher. Or like I should say, I might be okay with spending a little bit more money because my profit margin is going to be higher.
Exactly. Yeah. So it changes all the time. The bigger companies, they kind of set themselves up as like a machine that has to be fed. So sometimes they'll tighten their margins really tight just to get a house. But I would say in general, new guys can probably hop on there and really do your numbers. Again, like I can't stress that enough. But if you do your numbers and you're like, oh my goodness, I think I can make 20, 25K here. I'd encourage you, if you're thinking that and you're questioning yourself, don't question yourself. Know the numbers, go for it wisely. So auction.com is one. Foreclosures, if you're out of state, in Missouri, we're a non-judicial foreclosure state. So they're at courthouse steps. They're published in a newspaper. Check every newspaper nearby. Probate sales, a little bit harder to get into. You got to kind of have some contacts. And these are, you can Google these. So maybe to shorten it up for the sake of our time here, I would say this. If you Google how to find houses to purchase, the list that comes up is real and legitimate, and it works. Javi and I, our head of construction, we talk about this all the time. If we didn't do what we did, we would think it was a scam.
Yeah.
Like if we looked at somebody else and they told us what they did, like, oh, we flip 100 homes a year, like this is what we do, we'd be like, no, that doesn't work. That there's no shot.
Yeah.
It does. That's my encouragement. So look at those ways, door knocking, mailers, foreclosures, look at them. Take it seriously, and I guarantee you will end up with a deal within your first handful of months of looking very hard.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing and you have experience, I would say almost any investor out there could find one in a week. So it might take a little bit of a learning curve, but 3 to 6 months, you'll find one.
That's such good information. So my mind was starting to go towards another question that I think probably is more fundamental to before you even get to some of these questions that we already addressed would be like, because I think in everything, like you have to have like certain mindsets to be able to make, to be successful at anything, right? Like I used to tell people that whenever we were training in fitness, like I could tell you all the how-tos, but if you don't have the right mindsets, like the long-term vision of like delaying, like realizing it's going to take some time and it's not going to be something overnight, or maybe some of the calories in, calories out mindset of just like, well, I just got to cut calories and work out more and stuff like that. Or, well, I had a cheat day, I messed up, I'm going to make it in, I'm going to just turn today into another cheat day and it turns into a whole week. Those type of mindsets end up what is really what gets people derailed. And I was just kind of curious, are there some of those mindsets that might be important if somebody's getting into, house flipping, before they start, some things to consider?
Yeah, that is a really good question because, mindset is everything. The first thing that question makes me think of is what I tell anybody that I'm talking one-on-one to, which is I have been asked and Jesse has been asked these questions so many times, and the amount of people that have actually gone out and bought a house is next to none. It's so low. So one mindset I would say, and you kind of touched on it, is just go try.
Yeah.
And, I get it. If you worked your butt off for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, however many years to save up $100,000, $150,000, it can be terrifying to put it into something that you haven't done before. What I would tell you is, maybe this isn't the industry for you. Like, that would be one mindset. You've got to develop an investor mindset, and you've got to be prepared to make a little money, make a lot of money, break even, or lose money. Like I said, it's learning that balance of controlling your variables, knowing your numbers, and then rolling the dice.
Dude, that's so true, because in reality, like I think that's principally just reality for all different industries. Is like a lot of times it's just people afraid to get started or do something. I watch a lot of videos on the video side, like YouTube and things like that. And some of these guys are like, man, the problem is like a lot of the people just don't get out and start recording. Like they just don't turn on the camera and start doing it,
they think you just wake up famous one day. You post your first video with 2 million views. They haven't seen the 5,000 videos.
It's just more like, I think the action of just doing something. And I think a lot of times people think about, put all these things on paper and like but in reality, sometimes they just got to like start doing it. It's kind of.
I completely agree. I've seen people wish-wash and flip-flop on getting into real estate. I'm only 25, but I've seen people do it for 8 years. Like I remember people that I talked to 8 years ago and they still haven't done one. And again, really, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I would almost just tell them like, look, this may not be for you. You can almost like kind of stop wasting your headspace on it. But I was very fortunate what we're talking about here is my own story. I'm not just blowing smoke. So Jesse, a deal came across. It was a really old duplex in Wright City. Jesse's always got a lot of stuff going on. So I don't know if he was just busy or just a nice guy. I mean, he is a nice guy. So he kind of threw a deal my way. And he's like, look, you're going to have to do your own numbers on this and make sure, you're going to have, this is all on you, but I have this deal that this guy's presenting to me if you want to check it out. I got into it. It's not the most profitable. I kept it as a rental, this one. It's not the most profitable thing of all time because the city came by, the inspector, and he told me that I had to redo the entire siding. So, had to talk to some people I knew and try to get that done for cheap because I was 20 years old and I didn't have any money. And I was like, well, I spent all of my money to get the house. What do I do? I had to kind of figure it out. There was some foundation issues and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing's built on fieldstone, like just stacks of rocks. Had to figure that out. Started getting tenants and they stopped paying rent. And I had to learn really quick that people will just continue to steal from you unless you ask them not to. So I learned a buttload of lessons and I was very fortunate and, blessed I didn't lose any money on that place. It's up and running. I still have it and I love it. It got me into the industry. So with wisdom and discernment,
well, that's good too, because I mean, people could say, well, like, Cam, when you work for Simpli Homes, obviously you don't have like the skin in the game like, the company does, but obviously like what you're sharing is I've went out and made some of my own deals.
Yeah, I had a lot of skin in the game there.
It's coming from experience and this is like, really good that you shared that.
For sure. I do. I've been very fortunate to have the two perspectives I've had, which is, I work inside of a larger real estate flipping company. I work inside of that and get to see the volume and the data from that. But then on the side, I was 20 years old and broke and scrounged up what I had to get into it. So I kind of felt if I lose this money, I don't know how I'm going to make my mortgage payment. I kind of had that at the same time. So
I know for me too, starting out for business, it was kind of like, like I said, I'm not a huge risk taker. And so I didn't go out and take a big loan. So maybe you're the person that's like, man, I want to start a business. I'm not, but I'm not a risky type of person. Like I literally worked a full-time job and then started building like a clientele up as like, so I would, do stuff in the morning before work and after work. And then I would work full-time and, just had to grind it out for a while, but had that security of a full-time job. So it wasn't like just going all in and like, well, some people are in that position where like, they're just desperate and they have to do that. And sometimes that's the best place to be. Yeah. Because they end up being super successful that way. But for 100%. Me, it was just like, I even Ubered for quite some time. Just on the side to make extra money. And there's not a lot of places that you can go make $30, $40, $50 an hour, on the side.
I love that mindset, especially if you're 18 to 25.
Yeah, man.
Work a day job and then Uber in the evenings.
On a Saturday night, make $500 pretty easy, Oh
yeah, you either go out and drink with your buddies, or you can start like accelerating yourself to kind of these goals. And I don't have a problem with either lifestyle choice, but if you're trying to get into business,
Yeah. So any other like mindset things that maybe like, I was talking about like I used to be a personal trainer in fitness is like, one of the things that people would do is just be like, well, I'm, they're living a really like high stress life and at their job, and then at home, they're trying to juggle like their family. It's a lot of the clients I had were women. So like they had a full-time job, taking care of the family, taking care of the house, going to different ball games, and so they had all this stuff. And then they're adding on like a bunch of additional extra stress in ways of like, well, I'm going to run 5 miles a day. And we're like, okay, let's step back and be like, okay, why? One, maybe we need to cut out some other stuff, because if you have a lot of stress already and then you add a bunch more stress to that, like essentially the working out and the eating right becomes counterproductive to the very goal that you're trying to accomplish. And so it's kind of like, let's step back, look at what are some things that maybe you need to cut out first. And then it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be in the gym like, 7 days a week for 2 hours a day. What's like, maybe we could cut back and do like 4 days, 45 minutes of high intensity, workout, and make that more of like a consistent habit. So that's kind of like some just overall mindset. But sometimes people just take these random things like, I'm going to do this, but not really contemplating like why they're doing it. And is it going to be productive to the goal that you're trying to accomplish?
For sure. Yeah. That made me think of a few things, kind of flowing from the last conversation as well. It made me think of a quote. I think it's Warren Buffett, who said your first $100,000 is the hardest money you'll ever make in your entire life, or save, because that's kind of the idea there. Saving $100,000 is the hardest thing you'll ever do in business, because once you're there, you can do so many things with that $100,000 to make more money that making another 100 and another 100 and another is far easier in comparison. I think that quote applies so heavily to real estate. The number I give people, like I said, is 30, 40 if you want to use a bank. But yeah, if you have 100,000, especially in terms of like you just mentioned stress levels and things like that, you're going to be so in the clear that I think you're going to enjoy your life a little bit more. Get to that 100,000. I think that's great advice for real estate, because if you do that, when you dive in, you're not going to crank your stress levels. I'm definitely guilty of, I just dive in, and I think my wife would attest to, like, I will just get in over my head. I kind of enjoy it. Yeah. I love the stress. I love the, like, if I don't do this, things go really bad. I wouldn't recommend it, especially if you have kids. It's something I'm working on, especially before we have children. Like, I don't want to be doing that to them. Kind of want to provide a stable environment. So getting to that 100,000. Any other mindsets that I would bring up for getting into this, or maybe even limiting beliefs is another phrase I've heard that I really like.
It's great.
The first one is definitely, there's going to come a time where you just have to get into it. Don't get analysis paralysis. Find a cheaper house, make sure you have enough saved up, do your numbers, get into it. Another mindset would be, I think you touched on it. I would definitely say, if you get your first one or your second one or your third one and you end up breaking even or you end up losing a little bit of money, don't quit. You just spent, say you lost 10 grand. The way to process that is you just spent $10,000 to pay down your idiot tax. I think that's a Dave Ramsey phrase. Like, you now have shoved yourself forward in this industry. And Alex Hormozy, who I think I mentioned last time, a guy that I watch quite a bit, he always draws a graph, and it's flat for a very long time, and then it explodes up. It's like an exponential type growth. And I would venture to say it's going to be different for everybody, but the graph probably looks like your first 10 homes, pretty flat in terms of understanding and your skills. That 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th home is where you're going to hit that explosive growth. So don't be super discouraged if you don't make as much as you want, or break even, or lose a little bit of money. Learn that lesson, and then don't abandon it, because again, if you abandon it, that money's now just gone. Man. But if you keep pushing forward, now you've spent money on learning. I think that's a good way to frame that in your mind.
Dude, those two, like, I'm so glad you brought that up, because most people quit right before they're about to ready to, be really successful. And that's a huge one. And then the limiting beliefs, like, one of the biggest things I used to say to Nolan all the time, and he knows all about it, but like, the idea, limiting beliefs, meaning like, if you say you can, you can. If you say you can't, you can't. Like your actions always follow your beliefs. And I always would tell Nolan that, like, he'd be like, I can't do that. I'm like, well, yeah, you're not going to even try if you tell yourself you can't. And then you're just making that belief even bigger and bigger every time you tell yourself that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's, the limiting beliefs are all over real estate. Like, some of the questions kind of point to it of, is it even possible to still profit in this market? Like, one of the reframes, this is more stuff from Alex Hormozy, but one of the reframes is, don't say to yourself, there's no way to make money in real estate flipping. You have to tell yourself, I just don't know how to make money in real estate flipping. And that's that thought process never goes away. Like, we're where we are now, and we want to develop this, other revenue stream. And it's very tempting to say, like, that won't work. Like, but you just got to remember, it's like, I just don't know how to make that work, but somebody knows how to make that work. And then that's the real kicker with home flipping. And that's why I tell people, all of this information is Googleable, and what you can Google can get you 100% of the way there. Yeah, it is Googleable. I think I mentioned last time, Bigger Pockets is, I guarantee if you spend an hour every evening reading through Bigger Pockets or watching their videos, in a couple weeks, you have all the information you need to make an investment. There's no secret sauce.
It's just action.
There's nothing else out there. Yeah, there's just action. So I think that would be like a mentality that I would encourage, as well as there's no secrets out there. It's just action, which I think we've touched on a couple times now, but it is huge.
Well, man, I can't believe it's already been like almost an hour. It feels like it's only been like 20 minutes we've been talking. But I would love to be able to have you back on and just talk about more business principles and things. Like, I just feel like we could keep going on and on with multiple different videos.
I love it.
So we'll kind of wrap up with that. But before we go, is there any places where people can maybe are interested that might be able to find you, or is that even something that you guys want people to find, look for, like website, whatever?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm absolutely not on social media. You won't find me, but we do have simplyhomes.com. It's just www.simplyhomes.com. We don't do a ton of public facing marketing at this point. But I think I mentioned last video, if you know anybody who is stuck in probate or has a house they don't want, again, if you think it needs to be burnt down, we want it, and we'll fix it up. So maybe try to get some cash out of it. If you have any of those situations, www.simplyhomes.com. You can find us there. I think we have a Facebook and a LinkedIn. So
awesome.
You can just...
If you guys are interested in this content, in particular on the house flipping part side of things, I'm actually trying to convince Jesse and Cam to start their own YouTube channel and, start putting out a lot of this content. So, put on the comments and be like, you guys got to do this. Kind of put some pressure on them, because I think it'd be so helpful, and they have so much valuable information to bring to the world. But yeah, definitely, put on there. And if you definitely like this content that we're putting out with Radiance Videography, we'd love it if you could like, subscribe, share, do all the things. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, Cam, for jumping on another video, and hopefully next month or whatever, we can get you back on if that's cool with you.
Heck yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a blast. Love it.
Sweet. Peace.
Sweet.